Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 50. That's 50. Welcome back, my friends. This is Velvet Eau Claire. As always, I am your guide through all of the secrets, saucy secrets, sexy secrets, and very often not so sexy secrets of the ladies, gents, and non-binary folk behind the tassels. And that is right, you heard right. This is episode number 50. This is a half of 100. In case you can't do math. This is a big deal. It's very exciting, and I am really excited to be having this episode come out right smack dab in the middle of the season O sex. As you know, if you've been listening, this is the season O sex. We are celebrating, we are exploring, we are examining everything that has to do, especially with the relationship between sexuality and burlesque. Last week, we had Virginia Dare Me come on to talk about the role that burlesque has played in her healing through some sexual trauma. And today I have Shayla D. Tumbling with us. And Shayla is actually someone that I met through Sex Down South. So I'm super excited to be having her come on and share some of her professional wisdom having to do with sexuality and sex education. So before I tell you a little bit about Shayla, let me just remind you very quickly, if you're interested in supporting the show, we have a couple ways out there for you to do that. Number one, I have a Patreon page set up if you're interested in donating monthly and getting some perks in return, some exclusive perks, exclusive access to yours truly, as well as a community that we're getting started with just the other patrons and things like that. You can find out all the information about that at burlesquestrippeddown.com/support. If you're interested in donating something other than money, if you're interested in donating your time and would like to become part of the Burlesque Stripped Down posse, if you'd like to come on board and help out even just with a few things or as an ambassador, kind of getting the word out there, we would love to have you. You can go to burlesquestrippeddown.com/join the posse, POSSE, and fill out a quick form and we can jump on Skype and get to know each other a little bit better in that respect. If you'd like to spread the good word, not as official ambassador, but just in your little corner of the world, please take a second to share this episode or any other episode or the Season O Sex in general. Share them with 2 friends, 4 friends, 5 friends, your whole troupe, your whole show, anybody like that. Just spread the word. Get that word out there. You can also subscribe, rate, and review in iTunes or whichever podcast player you use. If you subscribe, that'll automatically get the new episodes downloaded to your device, so you don't have to keep going to the website or checking on my Facebook or anything like that. You can get them automatically downloaded, and giving a little rating and review helps to kind of get us higher up in the rankings so that more people will find us. Okay, so that's the quick rundown of ways that you can support the show if you are loving it. Of course, you can always email me or go to the website and leave a voicemail, which is a button on the right-hand side, so that I can hear your beautiful voice. But in the meantime, let me tell you a little bit about Shayla D. Tumbling, who is with us today. Now, Shayla's mission is to educate people in understanding historical, cultural, generational trauma and supporting them in developing solutions and healing the trauma in order to have a healthier quality of life. As an emotional wellness and sexuality empowerment mentor, Shayla supports her clients in developing a healthy, balanced relationship with themselves and with others. She works with clients to better understand how sexuality is integral to their humanity and how to achieve unique, healthy relationships with their personal sexuality. I am totally on board with that. I don't know about you. Her core mission supports Black women reconnecting with their personal power through bliss and pleasure. She's dedicated to positive sexuality, advocacy, humanitarianism, and realignment. Shayla lives such a magical and joy-filled life. She works daily to remain positive and experience the beauty in living. And she desires nothing more than to share a little bit of her magic with you. And let me tell you, she is going to do that for all of us today, share a little bit of her magic. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into my conversation with Shayla D. Tumbling. Yes, that's right, my friends. I do have the beautiful, the fabulous Shayla Tumbling with me today. How are you doing, Shayla? Thank you for coming on.
Hi, Velvet. I am doing excellent today. How are you?
Awesome. I am doing okay. It is a day. It's a day. It's another day. As always, there are lovely tech issues that just haunt my life. I don't know. I just have the worst luck sometimes. But I am super excited to be jumping on with you and chatting with you a little bit. Now, I did, obviously I already, everybody listening has heard your bio, right? Because I talked a little bit about it in the intro. But why don't you just take a couple seconds to just kind of fill in some gaps? Let us know who the real Shayla is. What lights your fire? What gets you up in the morning?
Man, there's so many ways I could go with that question. Well, I guess since we're going to be talking about like the work that I do, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is making sure that the contribution I make to the world through my work is one that really helps people to reconnect and connect with, their sexuality and their sensuality in a way that's authentic for them, helping them to clear up any things within their lives that are just, holding them back and not allowing them to fully walk and stand and move in their personal power, which completely shifts our lives when we're able to do that. So I think that's a major part of the thing that pushes me and is part of my passion and motivates me.
I think it was perfect that we kind of met through Sex Down South as well. Of course, we had been emailing a little bit before the conference, and then we met briefly. I know we didn't really get to hang out and chat too much during the conference because it was such a whirlwind, wasn't it?
Yes.
It went by so fast. But it was perfect that was kind of our introduction because, the words that you're saying, if any of my listeners who have been listening for a while, they know how much I love the words like authenticity and vulnerability and all of these things and delving into our true authentic selves. So it really just feels like perfect that we would have met through something, especially at Sex Down South, because I felt like it was such an authentic place to be,
Yes, definitely.
I haven't been to a lot of other, sexuality or sex ed conferences, but that one just really something about it it felt so safe and just authentic, and everybody was just so wonderful. I can't say enough good things about that conference.
Yes, I'm biased. I know Marla and Tia, the creators, and I was at the first one last year as a volunteer, and also with one of the companies I work with. But I just love it. I've been to a few other sexuality conferences also. They were cool, but Sex Down South is definitely my favorite one.
Yeah, for sure. It's so, so good. I cannot wait for next year. Like literally, I'm already counting down the days. So I'm like, come on. Well, let's kind of launch in. Tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get into, on your website, your tagline is a Black women's sexuality and empowerment mentor, which those are such amazing, strong words, right? Empowerment. I love that. What's your journey been like? How did you get to where you are?
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna try.
I know it's a big question, a lot of years to cover.
I'll try to be as succinct as possible. So my formal education and training background is in mental health, is in psychology. So I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and English. I have a master's degree in mental health counseling, and I'm trained as a psychologist at the doctoral level. So I say trained to let people know that means I completed 4 or 5 years of doctoral work. Like I completed all of my coursework. I completed half of my dissertation, and I began doing an internship. So basically I'm 6 credit hours from being a doctor in psychology, counseling psychology. Gotcha. So that's my formal training and background. Along the way in that journey, it was kind of like, okay, so what am I going to do with this degree? Why am I getting into this? So I was an English major in undergrad because I love to read books. Since I was a very small child, I loved to read. So when I went to college, it was like, oh, I'm going to do something I like. I like to read books. I'm going to major in English. And then it was all like, what are you going to do with that degree? Are you going to teach people? And I was like, no, I'm not teaching people's children. So what else can I
Don't
do?
blame you.
No. I took a psychology course and fell in love with psychology. I had an amazing professor at the undergraduate level, and I was like, I've always been interested in people and why we do the things that we do. So I think psychology would be great. And then at that point, I was like, well, I have to continue on, with my graduate degree and everything. I want to get my doctorate. I always wanted to get my doctorate no matter what I did, because my idea was if I have my doctorate, I will be free to do whatever I want. There will be no limitations, in my career, because that's the highest you can go, right? So no one can tell me what to do. And I've always been like,
I'm a doctor. I do what I want.
I'm a Taurus too. So if you're into astrology, I'm a Taurus. I've always been like, I just want to do what I want to do without having people trying to tell me what to do. So I was like, yeah, if I get this doctorate, then I'll be at the top of my field and I can do whatever I want to do, however I want to do it. I won't have to worry about other people. So I decided to pursue the doctorate degree. And while I was in maybe undergrad, I recognized that there were not a lot of Black women and like a lot of Black people I knew who were in psychology with graduate degrees. So I met one doctorate level person that was in psychology when I was there, a Black woman, and I kind of took her. I was like, "You're going to be my mentor." So
yeah. Whether you like it or not, you're in.
She kind of gave me some advice about like graduate school and everything like that. And then I'd also taken a human sexuality course in undergrad, and I was like, man, this is awesome. You know, the only sexuality courses I had been one when I was in the 6th grade, and basically we were told, I'm from Mississippi originally, so
okay.
I don't know what the laws are, but they probably were abstinence teaching programs. But it was basically like, don't have sex before you get married because you'll have babies, and that will be very painful. Because I remember watching a video with a woman having a baby, and it looked really scary. In the 6th grade, that was my 6th ed, my whole 6th ed, and that's all I remember. And I was like, oh my God, no, yes.
Oh man.
So fast forward to like undergrad, I took the sexuality course, and I had that amazing professor who was just like really engaging and fun. I was like, yeah, I've always been interested in sexuality, but never had been able to study it, you know? So from that point, when I went to my master's program, which is really funny because it was at a Christian university in Mississippi, but there was a track in the program that was marriage and family. So we had a professor come in that year who had been in the sexuality field for like 30 years. He came in as a new dean of students, as a new head of our department. And he done work with like Masters and Johnsons and like research work with people who had been like major heavy research. So some of the women who were in the marriage and family course, they were like, we're going to be working with, you know, families. We're going to be working with couples. We need a sexuality course. So he did a complete survey course. And I was one of the students. They were like, we need people for numbers. Would you like to take a sexuality course? I said, yeah. So being in that course with him,
amazing.
It was awesome. I still have all my material from that course. There's just so much information he gave us. And what I walked away from that course with, it was just like, sexuality is so important to our lives. We're not taught how important and how it impacts us in every level. I mean, because he was telling us about so many different things, from like research that he'd done with people who would fall within the, you know, the category of being labeled as pedophiles, and the work they were doing around working with people in that arena, trying to figure out like, okay, what can we do? What type of, you know, treatment can we provide with people? And there were some pretty harsh things that were done back in the day, to working with people who had experienced, you know, childhood sexual abuse, group therapy and stuff that he'd done. And everything I walked away with just from the complete survey of that course was, our sexuality is so very important. And most of us are not given the opportunity to understand that and to integrate that into our lives, especially if you come from backgrounds where maybe religion is more heavily emphasized, and maybe where, you know, society says your sexuality and your expression has a flaw within like a certain arena. So that's my part of my story, being from the South, growing up in like in a religious environment and household. You know, it's kind of like, okay, you have sex when you get married. Okay, I am 34 years old right now. I have never been married.
Yeah, so, right?
You know, if I'm waiting, and you know, for people who choose to wait until they get married, that's great. But then for those of us who are, you know, if we're waiting to get married, I'm 34 years old. I would know nothing about my body, nothing about sexuality, you know, because it's not things that we're taught. So anyway, that was a part of my master's program. And then in my doctorate program, I came across a book because I integrate sexuality and looking at race and cultural trauma and healing those things. So when you're talking about the Black women's sexuality empowerment, I read a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome in my doctorate program, and it changed my life because I connected with a mentor in the New York area who does trauma outreach and prevention work around intergenerational trauma, how trauma is passed down throughout the generations. And this book was written by an amazing woman, Dr. Joy Leary, but post-traumatic slave syndrome. And she talks about how the impact of slavery has, you know, impacted the African American community or people of African descent, and how there's so many things that have been passed down throughout the generations because of that institution, and there hasn't been healing done around that. So we see these things showing up in our communities, but we haven't been able to do the healing work or done the healing work around it. So they're showing up as pathological things in our communities. So reading that really opened my eyes because I was like, what? Wait a minute. Why wasn't I taught this before? There are a lot of things we're not talking about, like throughout school, just basically about like African American history. And then all those things, I don't believe in coincidence in any way whatsoever anymore. So I just feel like all those different things were coming into my life to show me, okay, this is the path. And then personally in my own life, it was like, I was recognizing that I wasn't as confident, you know, in my body. I wasn't as like sure of myself just in general. And I began to make the connection like, oh, it could be because of these identities that I hold, the identities of being a Black woman, the identity, you know, of being Black, the identity of being a woman, and what those different things mean related to our sexuality. Like as women, we have this whole list of things, these stereotypes about how we're supposed to be as women with our sexuality. And then culturally, I also had those, you know, identifying as a Black person, and then culturally even more identify as a person from the South. You know, there are so many different categories that impact our identities. And then I was like, man, all these things are impacting the way that I move and I feel in this body that I have. And so I definitely want to be able to, while I'm doing my own healing work and learning about these things and releasing and, you know, pushing through the boundaries that have been created for whatever different reasons they've been created in my life, I want to be able to be an example and then provide a space for other women, you know, who identify as Black, identify as women, you know, identify, you know, as Southern, or that can relate to anything that I'm saying, to be able to come and have a space where they can also work through those things with someone who is walking that path and or has walked part of that path, you know, with them, but creating that safe space, because I think we all need safe space for like our healing and our restoration work. So.
Girl. Oh my gosh, I love so much of what you just said. Yes, absolutely. And you make such a good point about, you know, having these different types of issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because as women, people who identify as women, mm-hmm. you know, we have, I'm just basically repeating what you just said, but, you know, we have that one set of issues. For those of you who identify as Black, you have another set of issues. For people like me, I identify as bisexual. I have another set of issues. Mm-hmm. You know, we have all of these things. And you're right. It's so easy to just kind of not really deal with them and just be like, oh, it just is what it is, or it's okay. Mm-hmm. Or to look for the healing or the dealing with, mm-hmm. quote unquote, in a situation that doesn't really reflect all of the things that go into making us who we are. Mm-hmm. So you will, you know, like you might not get the same, I don't know how to put it. I don't want to say healing, because it's not always about healing from trauma, mm-hmm. but it's about, you know, kind of the same work. If you do work with someone who is from a different cultural background than yours, mm-hmm. it's not to say one is better or worse, but they're just different and we don't always understand. We can try, we can listen, we can empathize and try to understand, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, definitely. Because I also do, I do a lot of different things. If you looked at my website, and I'm working on figuring out how to make it more cohesive, I guess, creating myself as a brand and then the things I do underneath those too. So, but I also
story of my life. I have a million. I call myself a multi-passionate. I have a million different things. I don't know how to bring them all together.
I just recently heard that term from one of these business mentors that I follow. She was like,
"Isn't it great?"
She was like, "They're multi-passionate entrepreneurs." I was like, "That's me," because
That's it.
Yes, people who are more traditional in business will, and they were like, "Shayla, you're trying to do too many things. Focus on one." But I'm like, no, they're all equally important. And if I feel inspired right now, I can't just put one on the back burner. So I got to figure out how to do them all at the same time, because that's what's coming out of me right now.
Yes, I agree 100%. I'm in the same boat. But anyway, what were you saying before?
Oh, I was saying, so I also work with men. I'm also a professional cuddler. So all those things working with men.
I totally want to talk about that, by the way.
Oh, great. But working with men, you know, I am the farthest end of the spectrum. I don't identify, you know, with, working with men. I'm a woman. I've always identified cisgender, you know, so like I love men, I respect them, but then that's completely out of my like comfort zone. And I'm always like, hey, I'm going to work with women. I'm a woman. I'm going to work with women. That's going to be like my main population I work with. But then things I recognize I connected with men. There would be men who would seek me out for like emotional support and for guidance. And I was like, it feels like men might be a part of the group I'm meant to work with too.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting. That reminds me of, my idol, my goddess in life is Brene Brown. Do you know Brene Brown?
Yeah.
Right. I'm saying, I'm sure everybody listening is so sick and tired of me hearing about her, but that's only because they haven't gone and checked her out yet. Because once you check her out, you are never sick of her because she's amazing.
Goodness, yes.
And she said in one of her books, she was talking about how she was initially focusing on the shame with women.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone like came up to her after a talk, or I don't remember the exact story, but he basically said something to her about the way he was feeling shame in his family because he was not the provider, because he wasn't, didn't always wear the pants or this or that or the other. I mean, I'm paraphrasing there, but and that just kind of opened her eyes into the fact that no, actually men deal with these things too. And if I want to explore the full range of human emotions in this particular way, in shame and in vulnerability, I have to examine that as well.
Yeah.
She's so good.
Oh, I love Renee. So yes, I just ordered 2 of her books that I hadn't read before, to get the imperfection and another one, because I'm about to create, like, I'm shifting a lot of stuff with my programming and the work that I do. And shame keeps coming up for me. So I'm like,
yes,
I need to start doing more work around like the shame, because I come from the trauma and I look at cultural trauma. So not sexual. Sexual trauma is not my area of expertise. Okay. And I know it can be confusing to people because I talk about like, helping women to heal generational trauma, but I'm looking at it from the cultural aspect. So not sexual trauma, but I have people like, I will know to refer people out and to send them in other directions. But shame kept coming up and I was like, okay, I got to do my work around shame. And it's obviously, that's part of the message I'm meant to send out too. So I'm getting all her material on that. Like,
yes.
about to create
she has
something
so much
around
good
that.
Stuff.
Yes, I love her.
She's so approachable. She has such a great way of putting things and making it in a really, because she's a little bit cynical almost, which I really appreciate, because everybody who's too like happy and all the time, I'm like, it's fine if that works for you, that's you, but like I'm a little bit cynical, so I need somebody else who's a little bit cynical in my life.
Yeah.
So obviously on this show, where we talk a lot about, because a lot of people who listen are either burlesque performers or burlesque enthusiasts, at least. But really, we're talking about kind of the greater realm of art. So do you have you worked a lot with artists in this realm of kind of coming to terms with sexuality and sexual expression? Has that been a part of your work at all?
Not intentionally so, but I am definitely open to it. Well, I feel like a lot of the people in my circles, they're talking about the multi-passionate thing. I feel like so many people in my circles, they might not identify as multi-passionate, but they're I don't know what the word, talented and like whatever the thing would be. So there are a lot of people who I interact with that are maybe not officially would fall in the artist category, but they are magical in the things that they do.
So many of us have that art, even if we don't really choose to express it in, a career or even a hobby kind of a way. I mean, we're all artistic beings. Let's be honest. No matter how we choose to emulate to get that out there in the world. I mean, even people who, I'm trying to think of a good example, like something non-artistic. Even people who do coding, right, on computers, like computer programming and things like that's an artistic expression as well. Like whether or not you like to admit it, sports, athleticism, is artistic as well. And so I think that, sometimes we have too limited a view on what qualifies, quote, as art.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really interesting to me, especially from burlesque. And so I'm not sure how familiar, you are with burlesque, but for anybody who's listening who doesn't quite know, burlesque is, kind of a very broad art form. It often includes striptease. It often includes a very sexual element, but neither of those are requisites. They're not required. It comes a lot from, this kind of satirical background back when, the burlesque was kind of the art of like the lower class people, like the higher class, they had the opera, right? They had these very, very fancy art forms. And then the lower class people had the fucking burlesque and the cabarets and the vaudeville that were there just like, making fun of the higher ups, making fun of all of these things. So that's kind of where it has its roots, but some of its roots anyway, but it's spread out so much more. But the great thing about burlesque, whether or not people choose to incorporate a sexual element, is that there often tends to be this very positive outlook on especially femininity and sexuality in general. So do you have any thoughts on that, on how we can how performers or people who are interested or, people who are going through this journey can kind of incorporate this this performance and this kind of public display, like making things on a more public scale, how that can kind of incorporate their journey on a private level? Does that make sense?
Let's see. So I I learned so much from so many different realms. So well, I don't identify as religious. I do identify as very spiritual. So a lot of things that I've been learning along my own personal journey that have been learning to integrate have come from some spiritual communities that really talk about different aspects of energy. So I also like energy, really into, I guess, metaphysical type things and energy and crystals and stuff like that. So that's just all prefacing. So my belief is that we're energetic beings, energetic spiritual beings, and that we have masculine and feminine energy within us. So however we identify, so I identify as a cisgender female, I still believe that I have both masculine and feminine energy within me. So saying that, what I've been learning on my own journey, learning more about energy and the chakras and learning about different spiritual deities that represent different aspects of the masculine and the feminine energy, is really tapping into, in particular, I've been studying with people who have in-depthly studied more of the African spiritual traditions, and they really talk a lot about different African deities, and there's certain ones that are related to femininity and feminine energy and the masculine stuff. So for me, there are certain colors that I may try to wear or try to make sure surround me. There are certain smells, there are certain crystals. I'm really into crystals. I've utilized yoni eggs. I don't know if your audience knows about yoni eggs.
I'm not sure. I've heard of them, but why don't you tell us a little bit about them?
Okay. So yoni eggs are semi-precious gemstones that are carved into the shape. They're carved and smoothed down into the shape of an egg, and women insert them into their womb space. So you can wear them. You can wear them inside your vagina, like in your womb space. You can set intentions in the crystals. So they are made out of more nowadays, they are made out of things like crystal quartz or rose quartz or obsidian. There are certain ones that you can wear internally, and it's always important to do your research to see what type of crystals are okay to wear internally, because some are shaped like eggs, but you wouldn't want to insert them just because of the makeup of them. They're not safe to be put inside of you internally. But you can get the benefit from holding the eggs, from just wearing them on your person, keeping them in your pocket. They send a vibration out. So whether you have them inside of your womb space or you're just having them on your person, it's still sending a vibration out. So eggs are one way. If you just want to, you can have different crystals related to certain aspects of femininity. Different colors, like the color yellow, because one of the goddess energies that I've learned about her color, one of her colors is yellow. Let's see what else. So there are colors, there are smells, there are crystals, things like that. I wear, I don't know if at the conference you noticed some women wearing the anklets that were jingling.
Yes, I did. I heard them coming a mile away.
So I have awesome. Those. Yeah, one of my friends, she sells those. So I think she calls them goddess bells. So I wear those.
Those are great.
Different things like that to tap into like my femininity. I don't wear them every day, but some days I'll go like a week and I'll wear them. Like, what are the? I'm like, oh, those are my goddess bells. But they're just like a symbol to like kind of remind me on a different level, like, oh, okay, I'm tapping more and trying to amp up my feminine energy more today, or be more aware of it and more present with it.
Well, I love that because I think all of those things are just really awesome kind of reminders, and even, kind of channeling the energy, and even as like a reminder for you, and like having that intentionality for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're wearing that, when you put that on, that is going to be one of these days that you channel that energy,
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, especially like as performers, and I was just thinking about it, and it's probably not true for everybody, but I know for me personally, like, yeah, you're damn right, I feel super fucking sexy when I am like in my full-on costume, and I've got like my corset, and I've got my makeup, I got my face on, and I got my wig, and I'm like, I have the whole, performance ready ensemble on, right? Yeah, I feel great, and I feel feminine, and I feel sexy. But when I get up in the morning and throw on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and go record a couple episodes at the library or, whatever I'm doing, it's hard sometimes to channel that same type of energy. I mean, yes, some of it does bleed over. I was just talking last week with Virginia Dermy, and she was saying about how when she discovered burlesque, it really helped her to kind of, in her everyday life, walk a little bit taller, and be a little bit more confident. So there is some bleed over, certainly, but it also is something that's kind of can be difficult sometimes, because sometimes then we'll start to associate that feeling, that confidence, that sexuality with the burlesque performance or the costume or the whatever it may be, the makeup or anything. So I love those, those thoughts that you had on kind of, channeling that energy and making that distinct conscious effort to do so.
Yeah, I think it's really important because we live in a very imbalanced world, and the imbalance is it's been heavily leaning towards the masculine for like hundreds and hundreds of years. And there's not anything necessarily wrong with the masculine, but it needs to be balanced with the feminine. And so now there's a rise of the feminine energy coming up, and we don't want it to be imbalanced on the feminine side either. We have to find the balance. But because we live in this type of world that it's still currently very much masculine energy and masculine focus, there's so many ills that are present in our society because there's an imbalance. So we can get caught up in that too as we go out into the world and we're, doing our work, trying to hustle, make sure things are lined up, because there's a way that the masculine energy is meant to operate and there's a way the feminine energy, and the feminine is more fluid and it's more receptive. The masculine is more like focused and linear and like, let's get things done and like go, 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 go. And we forget, we get caught up in that because we're trying to do our work and be successful. And then we can become, it's just really easy to get caught up. It's a pattern. We're used to it. And so if we're not consciously, like you said, consciously, intentionally trying to make sure that we are having that balance in our lives daily, moment to moment, in our interactions with ourselves and interactions with other people, then we can fall back into that pattern. And all the work I think a lot of us are doing now is trying to break out of that paradigm and to break out of that pattern so we can bring in more of the feminine and then have like a really good balance for all of us.
A lot of what we're talking about reminds me of, I had an episode with Kalita, who is a showgirl. She calls herself the showgirl shaman, and she's out of San Francisco. And she and I talked a lot about energy as well. So those of you listening, if you have not heard that episode, I will link it up in the show notes for this episode, which, by the way, will be at burlesquestrippeddown.com/Shayla, SHAYLA, Shayla. And so you'll get a link to that episode with Kalita, which if you haven't listened, definitely go do that, because she had a lot of other, a lot of things that tie into this. And now I'm starting to get in my head and I'm thinking about maybe getting you two together on a call sometime so we can just talk about energy for like an hour, and it would be amazing. Masculine, feminine. So good. Now, I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about cuddling, because I don't want us to run out of time before we talk about this. Tell me about cuddling and about your work with cuddling, because some of the people listening may not have, obviously they're aware that cuddling is a thing, like you cuddle with your significant other, or you cuddle before or after intimacy, or this or that. But tell us about the work that you do with cuddling.
Okay, well, I am a professional cuddler. So
I love that that's a thing. I love it.
Yes, cuddling's been around for ages, and then there are also there are cuddle parties which have been around. I think I just saw an article the other day. Cuddle parties have officially been around for about like 10 years, and more recently, in my knowledge of cuddling as a professional service, it has been around probably about maybe 6 or 7 years. So I first heard about cuddling as a professional service maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, before I moved to Seattle. I went to Seattle at one point during my doctoral program. When I moved back from Seattle, which is when I started my cuddling business, I moved back. Some things were going on with my doctorate program. I was trying to figure out ways in which I could continue in school and fund myself to continue in school. And I came across cuddling again for the third time. So earlier when I said I don't really believe in coincidences anymore. So for me, 3 is very significant. If I come across a concept or a term or something like 3 times, it really stands out to me. So that was the third time I came across it. There was this lady in Portland, Oregon, where I just come from, and she was a professional cuddler. She had a business for about 2 years, and she was just talking about, and I was like, I heard about this cuddling thing before, like a few years prior. So I looked more into it, and I was in the process of trying to move to New York to do some work with my mentor. And I was like, I'm going to need to be able to support myself while I'm there. I'm going to need to have flexibility because I'm working with her full time as an intern, and that's not paid, but I need to be able to like make money because New York is not free.
Yeah, true.
So I looked more into cuddling, and I was like, I like hugging people. I like cuddling, so let's see how I can turn this into a business. Fast forward, I moved to Georgia. It was supposed to be a very short term here in Georgia. My partner at the time lived here, so I asked him, could I come and stay for a couple weeks Now, I have no business in background. No business in background. My business, I was trained to be like a mental health therapist, so no business in background. So a couple of weeks, I was like, yeah, I'm going to come and get, I started the business in Nashville where I was like, I'm going to come and then I'm going to get it rolling here and I'm going to take it to New York. And I've been in Atlanta for 2 years. But
life happens,
yes,
man. Life
it does.
happens.
I connected with my business partner when I got here, and she had an idea about a companionship company, which she was creating and providing companionship for people. And I had the cuddling aspect. So we talked and we combined our ideas together, and it became a cuddling and companionship company. So yeah, we began offering professional services, doing individual services with clients. We also host group cuddling events, which we've been rolling out more and more. Ideally, we would eventually want to have a space, like a retail space. Right now, we go see clients and clients come to see us. But we do want to kind of like like if you go to the massage like Massage Envy or someplace like that, like we want to be able to have a retail location where clients can maybe stop in, have a walk-in, on their lunch break or something like that. Right now, it's a little more not tedious, but it's a little more in-depth process because just connecting with clients and then doing our consultation, so it's not like an immediate, like, oh, we can do a walk-in. It takes maybe about a 24-hour turnaround. But so we're professional cuddlers. So we are still in the process of growing this business and letting people in the Atlanta area know. People are hearing about it more and more, which is really great. There are more articles coming out about it and videos, about other companies that exist around the United States and people who are cuddlers. So, and it is still very, as progressive as Atlanta is, and we are still in the South and in the Bible Belt. And so a lot of times people are like, is this a sexual service? Are you guys prostitute?
Sure.
And we're like, no, it's not. Nothing's wrong with prostitution, but this is not a sexual service. That's not what this is. So, a lot of education, and just reminds us that a lot of education is needed around the importance of platonic touch and what platonic touch is.
Yes.
And that it's a service that people can actually utilize.
I love that because I think it's so important to talk about touch because we're kind of as Americans, we're slightly better because we are huggers, usually, often, not always. But like it's kind of more acceptable. I'm just thinking about like when I lived in France, for example, and it was you didn't hug, you did the bisous, which is the 2 kisses on the cheek,
Mm-hmm.
And so there was just a lot. I saw it there a lot, but I see it here as well. I mean, just one hug does not, enough platonic touch make. So it's about, it's about finding that kind of that recourse. I was listening to an episode of Multi-Amory a couple days ago about masculinity, and they were discussing about how, especially for men growing up, like the only acceptable forms of touch are really either, during intercourse with a female or when you're fighting, and they were saying that maybe that has something to do with why boys tend to wrestle so much, perhaps. But that's a whole different topic. I just love that this is a thing. I love that this is becoming a thing. Real quick, why don't you tell some of us who have never, we've never had like a cuddling, like what does a session kind of include? Is it just kind of like showing up and just being like, all right, big spoon, little spoon, let's go. Like, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
So
that's awesome.
It depends on the client, and we'll do we do a consultation before we meet. Before we do our first session. So someone will contact us, we'll send them the paperwork because they have to go through the paperwork, and it states this is not a sexual service and these are things you can expect and how you need to come prepared for the service. We'll do the consultation.
Shower. I imagine showering is important.
Hygiene is very important. Want to be clean and not be not heavily perfumed or lotioned with smells and stuff, just to be aware of people's sensitivities and everything like that. So we talk about that. We do the consultation so we can meet and get a feel for each other's energy. And then we have the session. So that depends, again, on the client. And as you know, everyone has a different level of comfort with touch. Some of us may have had the experience in our life of never having to have any type of negative touch or any type of bad touch. Can't think of better ways to say that, but a lot of us have not. A lot of us had really bad experiences with touch in our lives, and some traumatic things happen to us. So we want to make sure we're sensitive and we're aware of that, and we talk about that with the client. And we go through that again when we meet. We'll do it prior, and when we meet, and ask, okay, are there certain areas that you're aware of that you prefer not having touch, if there's any pain or just things, and we let them know. our bodies hold and store memories. Like that's a part of my work when I talk to people about trauma. Like our bodies hold onto things, our cells hold onto memories, and a lot of us are not aware of that. So things can be triggered when we're in these spaces and someone is touching us, and that's okay. And we talk about consent and making sure that throughout the entire process, if they ever feel uncomfortable, they let us know that, and same thing with us. And then we try to let the client, definitely have a voice and be empowered in what is going on. So, we ask them, do you have a preference, like a special cuddling position that you like? Sometimes they may not really, have one or be sure. So we'll offer some things. Spooning is my personal favorite. So
yeah.
I usually throw that one out first. I'll usually be like, hey, would you like to be the big spooner? You want me to be the big spooner? So like usually spooning. Yeah. But then, we can work through other positions too. Just it all really depends on what the client is feeling like and what they need. We were participants at a healing event this weekend, and some of the people that came through our space were kind of like, well, I'm not really sure what to do or what. I was like, well, whatever, what are you feeling? Just let me know. I can always spoon, but what is it, what do you want? What do you feel like you need in this moment? And we're here to provide that for you, because the session is about you as the client. We will do breathing exercises, taking people through breathing, sometimes eye gazing. We talk about touch. We talk about intimacy and, just our societies and the way we're raised and different identities and how that impacts us. So we try to also talk about that. Maybe it depends on the environment we're in. So not always in a typical session, because the client may not feel like talking, kind of like when you go to the massage therapist. I usually try to lay there and go to sleep. Some people talk. Sometimes I feel like talking, but sometimes not. So it's kind of like that. It's like, if you want to talk, we can talk the whole time. If you just want to be quiet, we won't say anything. So I let them guide.
That's beautiful. I just think that's I suppose when you first say, I'm a professional cuddler, it sounds a little, it sounds a little silly. I'm going to be real. But it's so great. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way at all, because the reality is, it's something that we all need. I think about myself, and it's, and I do have opportunities in my life to cuddle. It's not like I'm starved for touch, but I would love to have just somebody to just come over and just, without any expectations of like the relationship that's there or anything like that. Just like I do with a massage, like you said, just like when I go to get a massage, and I can have a friendly relationship with my therapist, but it doesn't have to be anything more than that,
Yes. And I think that's a really important point. We're going to have to emphasize more. I think we're so aware of all these things in our heads. Like, we know this and why it's important to us and why we do this work, but then articulating that to other people. So what you were just saying about not having the expectation, and that's one of the biggest things that I think is really important. I can say throughout my life, even like on my sexual empowerment journey, and when I began to go into cuddling, and I was thinking about, why do I want to do this work? Why is it important? I've always been a cuddler my whole life, I would notice that no matter where I lived, I would always want to be able to connect with someone. And a lot of times I might find myself in a quasi relationship with someone or dating someone. And, it become a sexual relationship. And all I really wanted was just a connection where I could cuddle with someone, but not knowing how to articulate that.
I identify with that so much.
Right. And not knowing how to articulate that,
exactly.
Not being in my own power to be like, this is what I really want from you. This is what I need, falling into like those relationships.
Exactly. We have such a distinction in our culture, in our society, between friendship and romance. Like, those are the two boxes, really, that we're supposed to fall into. And yes, especially as female identified, we can get away with being a little more touchy-feely with our friends. That is true. But even that, like, there is some middle ground there. Sometimes you want that, whether it is physical or even emotional intimacy, doesn't always necessitate a sexual relationship or even a romantic relationship. Yes. I wish, oh my gosh, we're going to have you back on, because I feel like there are just so many more things I want to delve into with you at some point, whether it's, during this season of sex or another time. But before we sign off today, I want to make sure that we get in a couple of my favorite last questions. These are my favorite little categories that I do with all of my guests, no matter what realm it is, what season it is. The first one is called Pick Your Poison. Okay. And so we've gotten into a lot of like really deep stuff, but I always like to go a little superficial as well. So I have a list of 11 questions. We're not going to do all of them. I would like you to just pick one, any number 1 through 11.
Oh, just pick a number. Oh.
Any number. Yep, that's all you get. It's pick your poison. You don't get to know the question ahead of time. That's not how this works.
Okay, I'll pick 5. It's my favorite number.
Okay, this one's easy. What did you have for breakfast today?
Oh, I didn't eat breakfast. I ate pizza though right before we got on the call. So that was my breakfast.
I love it. That's amazing. Pizza for breakfast or pizza for brunch or whatever.
Yes.
Breakfast. It'll work. That'll work. Do you usually eat breakfast or is it not your
It
thing?
just depends because I stay up so late. I'll be up to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So when I get up in the morning, my body's not registered to eat till about 2. Right now, I'm
Yeah.
trained to start eating about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So not always breakfast, but I love pancakes and mimosas.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, girl. I love breakfast food. I just don't always eat it at breakfast. I'm trying to at least have like a banana and stuff like right when I wake up just to like get that potassium, to get that energy, but it's hard. I'm not much of a breakfast eater either. So, all right, this last little section is called This or That, and this is our quick fire round, and I have a list of a bunch of different choices, right? It's this or that, right? And I'm going to quick fire them at you and you just say whichever one you prefer.
Okay.
And I will also let you know that you can interpret these in any way you like. There's no right or wrong interpretation of them. Okay?
Okay.
Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Ooh, Starbucks.
City or country?
Ooh, country.
Movies or TV shows?
Movies.
Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with these two, but how about Dita Von Teese or Dirty Martini? Do you know those two?
Dita Von Teese, she's a performer. I don't know the performer Dirty Martini, so I'll go with Dita because I've heard her name before.
There you go. That'll work.
Yeah.
Now we move on to the bar, right? How about a dirty martini or a pint of beer?
Oh, a Dirty Martini.
Day or night?
Oh, day.
Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Harry Potter.
Ooh, all right. I'll allow it. Top or bottom?
Oh.
We can be talking about bunk beds. It's okay.
You are absolutely right. Bottom.
Bottom. There we go. Mountains or ocean?
Ocean.
Classic or neo-burlesque, if you know the difference.
Oh, I don't, but I'll go with classic. I always like a good classic.
Yeah, that's classic. That's kind of that Dita Von Teese style, right? Neo's a little bit more like kind of like silly and down and dirty usually. But
Okay.
how about peanut butter or jelly?
Peanut butter.
Comedy or tragedy?
Comedy.
Marvel or DC?
Ooh. Marvel, because I just saw Doctor Strange. I think he's Marvel.
Did you like it? Yeah, he is.
Yes.
I love
loved
it. Was so good. I loved all the energy and like, oh my gosh, it was so good.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How about sleep or sex?
Oof.
Oof. That's the
I was
tough
going to
one.
say sleep. I'm going to say sleep right
You're
now.
gonna say
But I
sleep.
love
All right.
sex, but sleep right now.
All right, fair enough. And now we have the ever important heels or bare feet.
Bare feet.
All right, pressure's off. Section's over. No more quickfire. It's okay. I know we need to wrap up real quick, but I just would like to say thank you so much for coming on, and I'd love to share with everybody, just so everybody listening knows. Of course, you can find the show notes for this episode at burlesquestripdown.com/Shayla, Shayla, and in that I'll put all the links. So Shayla, what is the best way to kind of get in touch with you, get in contact, keep up with you, find out more about cuddle parties, find out more about all the amazing stuff that you're doing?
You can find me on Facebook. I guess the best way would be to email me directly, though. I'm active on Facebook at Shayla D Tumbling, and also on Instagram at Shayla D Tumbling. And all the information, like my website, is shayladtumbling.com. And you can email me. You can hit me up on Messenger and then just email me from there.
Perfect. Like I said, I'll put all those links in the show notes. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Shayla, for coming on and sharing such amazing insights. You're a wonderful person to chat with and get to know.
Thank you. I really, really, really enjoyed coming on.
And there you have it, my friends. A really, really fabulous, uplifting, really just a magical conversation, I felt. You know, she said that in her bio, that she wants to impart some of that magic onto us. And that's really how I felt getting off of Skype with Shayla. And so thank you again to Shayla for coming on the show. Thank you to everyone for listening. And definitely, like I said, head over to burlesquestripdown.com/Shayla to check out all of the show notes for this episode, as well as to kind of get more information on Shayla and kind of keep up with her if you're interested in finding out more about what she gets into. Before I sign off today, I want to give a special shout out to Jacinta, who called in from London, England, with an amazing voice message that I listened to. It's funny, I told her I was actually at work when I got the message, and so I only had time to listen very quickly, but it immediately put a huge smile on my face. Just such kind words. So let's go ahead and listen to what Jacinta wanted to say.
Hi, Velvet. So I am Jacinta and I live in London. I run a cabaret night, run and host a cabaret night. And I'm just getting into the burlesque side of things. I am doing a class with Little Lady Luscious, who's amazing, and I'm just developing my first ever routine. So I'm finding your podcast really helpful, and really inspiring. And I'm finding the sort of concept of a supportive community out there all over the world, really like heartwarming and encouraging. So I just wanted to tell you that. Also, I just listened to the episode with Leopard Lass, and I've been enjoying all of them, but that one in particular, really, I guess, struck a chord. It's comforting to know that other people are also terrible at the technical side of things, because that freaks me out so much and can still be quite successful. Also, I'm running out of time, but I'm very excited about your season 0 sex, because I think it's really, really, really important to talk about all those issues. So I can't wait for the next episodes. Anyway, yeah, staying sexy. Bye.
So thank you again for calling in. If you would like to leave me a voice message and let me know what your thoughts on either the podcast in general or anything that we've been talking about, you can do so at burlesquestripdown.com or at any of the pages on that website. There will be a little bit over on the right-hand side that says leave me a message, and you can click that. You can do it right on your computer, and I think it works on your phone as well. It'll just use the microphone there, and you can leave up to 90 seconds, a minute and a half of, your love words or your, constructive criticisms if need be, because I would love to hear from each and every one of you and let me know what you think of the show, what you think of the season 0 sex, what you're getting out of it, and what you'd like for the future. Don't forget the other ways to support the show if you're interested. We have Patreon, we have the posse that's getting going, we have sharing with your friends, and of course subscribing, rating, and reviewing in iTunes or whichever player you use. Stay tuned for continuing episodes here in the season 0 sex. Make sure that you stay inspired, stay blissful, stay loving that magic that's there in your life. Because when we're able to do that, we're able to stay sexy.